let's talk about the debate between religion and science as a whole. What is the story? Where are we in the story? From the Greek philosophers to the medieval way of thinking, to the Enlightenment, to the 20th century, the rise of modernism and ideology, 21st century, post-modernism, the New-Atheist movements, the who's who. Who's part of the conversation and who's going to be left behind? Where are we and where are we going? Are we making any progress? What things can we agree on? What things should we aim to agree on? Myself and Kyle talk about this in the Accessory to Thought podcast. I'm afraid Ben was not able to make it last minute, but this is a fruitful conversation and I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.
I'm very interested in like publication biases and different biases in research, and it's actually sort of when we talk about what we should do from here in, it's actually really put me in like a kind of cool mindset about what's going on and like the issues with like the different biases. It's put me in like a thing of like how we're brought up, how that affects our opinion, where we go for our information, how that affects our opinion, what we understand, and it's sort of, I'll talk about it more later, but it's sort of, I've got quite a lot in like things that need addressed, and I think if we're actually going to develop this kind of spectrum as quite a field of, we need to put down like and assess what's wrong with it, like empirically, like you do with everything else in sense. So I think, and there's real scope to do that.
I forgot that you're obviously gonna be interested in the meta story, obviously. My camera's smaller now. I have to figure out where my
your hand.
No, there we go. So I think we should start off with just, I've got a bunch of notes just outlining the brief summary of just the conversation from the Greek philosophers, the medieval era, all the way through to now. So I'll just run through that really quick, and then I've got questions here. So I'm just going to do a timeline of the summary. We can name the key figures of the conversation, so to speak, and that'll be a good start.
That sounds good, because I'm quite I know a few, but to be honest, is like the sort of the timeline of atheism and stuff. Like, it's mainly boomed with the rise of pushing for like scientific reason and stuff, which is a relatively recent phenomenon. So sort of more the Greeks' opinion of it's a bit different.
Yeah, well, I can start off with it. So I've separated these into like different chunks of thought, different philosophies, different eras of philosophy. So you start off with the Greek and medieval way of thinking. So that would be your Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, but it's quite a broad time frame. So they would the place philosophy played in that time period. It was more deductive. What should the world be from our philosophical reasoning? You know, it's like they initiated the theories. It's, for example, astrology would be more, what should the world be, if that makes sense, from a philosophy, and you're extrapolating that onto the world. And then you get to this Enlightenment period,
the boom of science,
where we move to a Newtonian way of looking at the world. So that would, some characters to put in that time period would be Galileo and Copernicus. That was the whole debate between the heliocentric model, like does the Earth revolve around the sun, or the sun revolve around the Earth?
Regarding like Galileo and stuff, like, as far as I understand with these, though, they weren't very interested in religion. They didn't really see any. They were just trying to give order to what we understood. So we used to think that, as you sort of said, like everything goes around the Earth because it appears like that when we look out. But then they showed that it doesn't go around the Earth. But I don't really think they really dove into at this point that about God or anything. I know there's a philosopher in the Enlightenment. What's his name? Is it Baruch Spinoza? And it's kind of funny. He describes God as everything around us in nature.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why is he still calling that God? Because that's not necessarily the modern God as we think of. And he's like, God is nature and everything around us.
Yeah.
And there's actually it's quite
he was
funny.
a hippie before his time.
Yeah, and Albert Einstein, people like to quote that he believed in God, but he always quotes, I believe in the Baruch Spinozian God. And he's kind of taking the mick out of, I believe in everything around us. But I've seen debates and even Einstein was a believer. And I'm like, if you actually...
I wouldn't put emphasis on him having a belief in God, but I wouldn't say he was an atheist.
No, he was agnostic in the way of, he understood that but he didn't really delve into scientific reason, because it wasn't really seen as an issue. We kind of trusted what people had already done at that stage. So the subject of maybe we should actually check what we're doing to make sure it's right wasn't really a mentality then. It was more, he set down some foundations.
Yeah.
And of more he set down quite a lot of foundations of obviously theory of relativity, and started to think of his more line of thinking is we can't really understand the universe because we live in this Goldilocks zone of medium time and medium sized things. But
well, I think we're getting a wee bit too ahead of ourselves. I've got a few more points. So then after that, that'll be Einstein's. Yeah. So the basic Newtonian idea of the world is we derive our theories from the observations, and then the philosophy can now be used to comment on what we have derived and comment on the method and how we derive, but it's not deducing what the actual what the theory is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there is. I haven't read it. You might be interested. Steven Pinker has a book called The Enlightenment Now, and he talks about all the foundation of the ideas of this kind of line of thinking and how it influences us today.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
I haven't read it, but I watched a conversation he had.
Yeah.
About it, and it's quite fascinating. But his brain's a different brain than I have.
Right.
The way he operates, he's very.
I haven't looked much into him, to be honest with you. Yeah, but
he is very good.
Yeah, so the later stage of that, just before the 20th century. So you start to see that we're looking at the world in a slightly different way. It's less from a direct meaning perspective, and from that point, that's when we get the Enlightenment and also the Reformation and the Newtonian way of thinking. But we can
continue, sorry.
We can comment on why I think that led to the Reformation a wee bit after, if you want. Mm-hmm. And then because of that, it's sort of a disassociation with the meaning and the matter. It didn't play itself fully out, I think, in the Enlightenment, but the seeds were there. And then Nietzsche came at
would you say during the Enlightenment we started to move, from what I kind of put it in my head, I don't know if it's correct though, we started to move away from purely theoretical ideas and started to go into empirical ideas, and we can actually start to measure things. And that was kind of the start to change around the Enlightenment time. So everything was very theoretical science before that. But we then the Enlightenment started to put into measuring things, and
I would press on the way you phrased that, because empirical means what is observed. For example, just for example, so a person who countered the whole heliocentric thing was a guy, I don't know how to say his name, was Ptolemy, but it begins with a PT.
Okay.
Don't ask me how you do that one. But he had the idea of, there's the Earth, the flat Earth, and there's like a dome, glassy. It's like a glassy dome, and then there's like water above that, which makes sense. That is what is observed. There's like blue, looks like the ocean, only it's not falling on us, but it falls on us sometimes, right? But it's see-through. What's holding up there? Glassy dome.
I didn't know there was water above. I've seen the dome
there's water
with all the stars, but I haven't seen the water.
No, well, it makes philosophical sense, and that you can empirically. That's what we see, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is empirical. But
what I meant more by empirical, like we started to derive like mathematical models and equations, and actual measure statistics rather than proposing ideas.
But that's not statistics. Isn't empirical.
Well, it's empirical.
And mathematical equations is not empirical.
But it's based on like So what I mean is like you observe something and then record it with and then you do statistical tests. The models of theoretical.
You're talking about the scientific method.
Yeah, sort of the birth of the method.
Yeah,
So
the Newtonian style thinking, that was the birth of the scientific method. I'd agree with you in that. But then the later stages of the Enlightenment period, I suppose you'd have was Nietzsche. I'd say he was the person who basically told you the next step was going to happen before it did. So he was right before the turn of the 20th century. So Nietzsche had the whole quote of God is dead, but that's not the end of the quote. God is dead and we have killed him, and the blood we cannot wash off our hands, the murderer. What are we to do, the murderer of all murderers? What sacred games are we now to invent to hold up the structure of the world, essentially? Well, these sacred games, they came in the form of ideology and the rise of like modernism, and the idea that the world could possibly progress into a utopian idea, and that played itself out in communism and fascism and all these things that the world was less united under a god. It was united under an ideology. Yeah, and if you listen to John Pearson, he'll tell you all about how that was a big no-no, because now the king or the emperor, whoever the top dog was in the society, he's now the top guy in the world because there's no god above him, right? So then it's like he's not being judged.
Yeah,
so it allows for tyrants to easily, from a moral perspective, because they're not. Yeah, well, if you want to hear more about that, obviously listen to John Pearson.
Yeah, because I quite like the way it's sort of. He is very accurate in a way. Sometimes in secular societies, through like totalitarianism, the leader fills that god niche, and he's the tyrant. He is the ultimate, and obviously that does lead to things like Nazi Germany and communist China and things, which is hasn't been great.
Just like the arbitrariness of the moral system, and then you have the rise of modernism. So, an emphasis on the depart from tradition and religion and all that stuff. 21st century. I'll also throw in Darwin there, wherever he was born, obviously.
1859. Origin
1859. Yeah. Obviously, we need to name him. 21st century. Early 21st century. Post-modernism really takes hold, like a reductionist kind of mindset takes hold. So I've got a few points here. So moral relativism, epistemological relativism just means like it also rejects the rejection of meaning and certainty, and like how can we know things. It's like it's a power of it's a force of unrivaled destruction. It's like, how can we know things? It rejects knowledge. We can't know things. Who's to say that's good and that's bad? Who's to say, it's a reductionist system. It negates higher meaning and its presupposition, I suppose.
It takes away there's any objective truth in the world, which is extremely dangerous.
It negates all statements of objective fact. It rejects hardcore postmodernism would reject realism, I suppose, which is the idea that, you know, realism, probably going to butcher it, but it's like the idea that there's an outside world that's there dependent on if we see it or not.
Yeah, because postmodernists sort of see it like as a...
Because it's all arbitrary.
Yeah, and
like
they always... I've seen like people talk about like through this, so we all see colours, but the colours we see are obviously subjective to me, so my green's not your green.
Well, and in theory that could possibly happen, and you know who's...
Yeah, but I think it's, you start to go down a very dangerous road of like, so if I write, like even through postmodernism, like you read a quote from the Bible, and what that means for you is different to me, but different to someone else. But then if someone takes something dangerous from that, you can't tell them they're wrong.
Yeah.
But you can tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, it works both ways. I sum up as like, postmodernism, we don't know anything and we cannot know anything, and let's shut up because our words have no meaning.
Yeah.
if you're a postmodernist to the extreme, you would shut up.
Yeah, I haven't really. Yeah.
It's like a self-negating thing, but it's a force of unrivaled destruction, because you can say maybe it was first arise against religious notions, but it's not.
It's a clever way to do it.
It's not limited to religion. It could be anything.
It's anything, yeah.
So it works both ways.
Do people actually live like?
You can't live it. You can't. You can.
Like,
you can. It's impossible.
People...
You wouldn't exist. You'd disappear.
Is it the birth of a concept then, or is it the birth of like an actual following of this kind of line of thought?
I'd say it's less of an actual serious worldview, more of a. You can't act out postmodernism. You can't act out postmodernism. If you acted out postmodernism, you would vanish immediately. That's what it means to act out postmodernism.
Yeah.
Show me a postmodernist, they would disappear.
I've never really. That's why I haven't really looked too much into it. I've just sort of like been like, that doesn't make sense why people.
It's more of an intellectual notion, but I could describe it the best way. It's like an intellectual goal of what the reality is, but yet your goal assumes that goals don't really exist. It's a complete. Anyway, so that's like that really took root early 21st century, and you had the rise of the New-Atheist movement. So you've got your Christopher Hitchens, your Richard Dawkins, your Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris, who are the four horsemen of atheism. Started a whole movement on their own, I suppose. Well, obviously in the context of the narrative, you know, they didn't start it; they just acted out. It was inevitable, I suppose. But then you've got to right now / a few years ago, I suppose, because the New-Atheist movement, it's lost all its wind and all the wind in its sails. It's not. They haven't won the.
But the bringing, I
conversation.
Think it was where the public brought it to like, oh, these are a group of people, because they had like, it was a couple of podcasts they had together. It was just a bunch of secular people of different backgrounds, and they talked from their different perspectives in one. So I think it got not blown out of proportion as such, but it like got took into like, oh, this is a group of people rather than it's just four people that.
Well, it's not just four people though, because they were the.
They became the.
They characterized the whole movement. I mean, how many? It's almost a stereotype of an angry atheist who's a skeptic, and he's so proud that he's a skeptic, and has so much reason, and
yeah, but
he goes on YouTube and
like that. In the way, there's a stereotypic Christian person who, you know what I mean. It's sort of, it created a stereotype.
Yeah.
That 100%.
And there's people who embody those stereotypes. Like, how many channels out there are there just atheists who are define themselves as skeptics?
No, it's
too many. There's so many.
We don't need. Well, I think we can sort of maybe delve into. I think this section is about now of like what's wrong.
Well, I can have a few points of what's now or just about to happen, and also the future.
Yeah. No, if you give that first, and then we can sort of evaluate.
We can talk about all these. Obviously, there's a return to tradition. if you believe me or not, I think there is a return tradition, and there's going to be a return to tradition, and it's already happening. And the people who are returning to tradition are the young people of like our generation, kind of young people. They're people who, so say for example Catholicism, right?
Mm-hmm.
The people who are interested in the traditional Latin Mass are young Catholics. The people who think no, the young people won't be interested in it are the people who are our age in the 60s.
Yeah. Okay.
And then what's going to happen when that takes root? What happens when we start having kids?
Yeah, no, but I think
it's back.
It's quite a closed-minded. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Thing. I understand. There's new people buying into this, but there's new people buying into everything, and I more propose there's new people buying into other things at a quicker rate.
So, to characterize this movement, funnily enough, okay, Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Pajot. I'm going to list the four Horsemen of Meaning because it's hilarious. Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Pajot, John Vervaeke, and Bishop Barron.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a range of people there. You've got two people who are blatantly on the religious side. You've got two people who are more on the secular side, but they see they don't disregard it. So Jordan Peterson, I think he will eventually convert, but that's a private matter, I suppose. But he will come from the secular side, but I think he will.
But he's definitely, regardless if he converts or not, he has started a revelation of like what we need to do next, and I really think.
So I see Jordan Peterson as a bridge between these two worlds, the secular atheist world and the tradition world. I see him as a bridge. But the thing is, how long can you act as a bridge without being on
not
one
really?
side?
I think, but I get what you mean with the bridge. But I think he's sort of spawned this kind of what we need to do next. And like, I'll be honest, that like a lot of Daniel Dennett stuff, and a few of his books, yes, he's complete like atheist and stuff, but he has really, really good ideas. I like with what we should do in the future regarding this, and like the traditional thought of we should abolish religion isn't necessarily the approach. And I think Jordan Peterson's very good that we should actually value these texts.
Yeah.
And we need to take value from them, and 100% that we do. I do see that. There's great, beyond anything else, like for an anthropogenic kind of outlook, it's like important to know people.
Yeah.
If we look at it, but then even Richard Dawkins and stuff would say like these are important literature texts. It's just theology and reinterpreting this book 50,000 times over is not fruitful. But to understand people, the texts are important. And somewhere in the middle. They're important to research. I don't know if reinterpreting them is important.
I could disagree with that, but I'll keep on track. John Vervaeke, if you don't know who he is, he's a more of a secular person. I don't think he's a Christian.
I watched the episode. That's all I've watched of the four Horsemen.
He would see him, as far as I understand, he'd see himself as a naturalist, but not a materialist.
Okay.
He'd be the kind of person who, if I called him a materialist, he'd be like, "No, I'm a physicalist." When most of the time those two words are synonyms, which I find those people very interesting, by the way.
Yeah.
So he sees he thinks there's naturalistic ways of understanding consciousness from a level that's not just that incorporates consciousness as well. It's not just it's these processes. That's not consciousness. It's no matter who you are. That's not consciousness.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. And at what stage is it? It verges very heavily on the religious because it's hard not to do that.
See, I suppose what I sort of take from with that kind of thinking, it's like we don't know much about consciousness, and it's one of the things we need to really like start to research it in sort of a scientific sense and
Yeah. So
sort of a
he's
philosophical sense, and it needs a lot more done because we know so little about the brain and the interactions between the brain, and
yeah.
it's hard. As far as I know, we could just say we don't know yet. We don't know what it is.
Yeah, but he's I think he's trying to work on, can it be understood in a naturalistic way. Then you've got John Peugeot. I'll leave him to last actually. You've got Bishop Barron. He's a Catholic bishop in California.
Yeah.
I feel like out of the four of them, he's the most misplaced, but he could still be there. His content's more normal, if that makes sense. When I say that, it's more normal, but it's still valid. Jonathan Peugeot, he's trying to rebirth the mystical understanding of Christianity, and that's the first time I didn't immediately introduce him as a Eastern Orthodox icon carver. He's still one, just about. So he's trying to have this, as far as I can tell, he's trying to show modern people that there's a intellectual, mystical side of Christianity that like has been very brutally ignored. Like the same way when I say the people who don't want tradition are the people who are our age in the 60s. But I think there is a return to that, and I think he's playing a role in that. He's also, and it's also not just, this isn't just in the intellectual sphere. I think art is going to have a lot to do with it. I think I'm not going to say right now, I'm not going to even say give a time day on it, but I think at least John Peugeot is trying to create a movement of the reclaiming of the culture from a Christian perspective with art. My laptop's going to die real quick. Reclaiming of the culture with art and story.
Yeah.
Because that's not it. Because we've got these secular stories that are like parasitic in nature, and he doesn't like that. He doesn't like that. So he, like, for example, he's doing a project called God's Dog. It's a graphic novel. Okay. Symbolically speaking, it's a lower form of art, and that's part of, because he's a big symbolism. He knows what he's doing. He's not an idiot. Because I could go into symbolism. Do you want me to talk about symbolism?
You can go into it a little bit. But I don't really know much.
That's what I'm saying. If I go into it, it won't be a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it this episode's case? Should we come back?
There's a lot to speak about. I'll just splurt it out really fast. If you find it interesting,
yeah,
watch your viewers. You'll find use of it, hopefully. But I don't expect you to understand this. Christianity, origin, center, okay, but it's now been replaced by the margin. That's why you have all these wokeism. It's all about raising the margin, raising the person who doesn't fit in with society. You know what? LGBT stuff. They're in a margin of society. Oh, let's bring in the foreigner. Let's bring in, Dare knows how I get an email like every other week saying there's a new scholarship for my course, but only if you're a woman. Okay, interesting how that works.
Yeah, this is a dangerous playground.
I'll get cancelled.
Yeah, I'll do it. A dangerous playground.
I mean, I'm stating facts. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Every other week, I'll stop. Okay. So you have this replacing of the center with the people on the margin. Okay, watch my hands. I'm doing this.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay? But
we need to call it. He wants to cause a revolution. Okay, but Christianity will, because of what's happened here, Christianity will inevitably bleed in from the margins. Okay, the mirror isn't quite the same. So
I understand what you're trying to say.
And that's, you don't do that with fine art. You do that with comic books. Okay, you do that with the average Joe. It'll bleed. It's a lower form of art open to the margin. The comic is a leftover art piece. Does that make sense? So he's taken over that first, and then we can move closer until there is a full retaking
I
of the
suppose
culture.
this is kind of the, if we call it a gene, like, so there's a gene pool of like breeding. It's like a meme pool, and the propagation of ideas, how they loop in and then they come out, and then they loop in and then they loop out, and that's the way like genetics works. Like you'll have, for instance, we can all have blonde hair in one generation, and then eventually that gene would then black hair starts to be successful, so then the blondes start to go out, and then the black hair comes in, but then the opposite happens, and over like millions of years, these loop in and out, in and out, in and out. And I think it's sort of like, to me anyway, there's Christianity may come in the rise again, yes, but it just shows that the sort of movement of a meme coming in and out of fashion.
Yeah, I'll not disagree with that, but I've given that exact end piece explained symbolically. I'll explain the whole narrative that we've explained up until now, narratively, in symbolic terms. So you can notice these time periods are getting increasingly shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I agree.
Even though there are definitely distinct time periods of different thought.
Yeah,
Yes,
but now
there's-
go by like decades almost now.
Yeah.
It's, rather than the Enlightenment period of a couple of hundred.
Or even like, can you imagine a time before 2016? Pre-Donald Trump.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
I'm a couple of years
It's
older
like
than you,
that's
so
like
maybe,
that's a whole. No, I don't mean that way. It's like life has changed in a
like
political
what you can,
way. In a political way.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Anyway, sorry. These time periods are like speeding up. Symbolically speaking, the thing that causes change in a story is time. Okay.
Why do you think it's sped up? Just before we move on.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and explain that, but I took a
the
pause.
propagation of ideas is
Took a pause to figure out how on earth I'm going to explain this to you.
I'm with you, and I
So,
agree
okay.
with what you've said so far. Perfect.
Oh, happy days. Okay.
There's no.
Think about time. It keeps on changing. Okay, so don't think about time as in seconds or whatnot.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna just realize this is probably gonna be hurt. Okay.
You haven't said anything that I'm like.
Time keeps on changing. That's what time is. It's that which isn't stable. Okay. What's not stable? It's like water. It's chaos. Okay. It's potentiality. It's fluctuating. It's always moving.
Okay.
What are
Yeah,
waves
yeah,
doing?
yeah.
They're always changing. They're in one
Yeah.
place. Okay. That's what time is. Okay. Time. We're experiencing more time up in this whole process. Okay. The story keeps the amount of time that takes between something changing is smaller.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
time
Like,
is
I'm
we're
with your, like,
being-
kind of concept. Of,
time is increasing its power, if that makes sense. Okay.
yeah.
Now, if you can imagine it,
What changes in 1 year now would have changed in a decade.
yeah, okay, that's a
Amount
good
of
way,
100 years
good
ago.
way of looking at it. Even think about the technical progression of that, of the scientific
Yeah.
technology
like
discoveries. Okay, it works exactly the same. Now, I'm going to bring in Bible story
God
examples.
smuggling.
I'm going to smuggle God into this. God, are you ready? So imagine the Noah story. I don't want you to debate me. I'm just thinking of the story.
I'm listening.
Okay. It's the waters above are coming in now, Kyle. Remember that glass dome up there I was telling you about the ocean?
Yeah.
This is where it's coming back in, right? So imagine the Noah story. It's the land gets less and less and less. Okay. The only thing separating the heavens and the earth, or the heavens and the waters above and the waters below, is a wee boat with some animals on it. Okay.
Yep.
There's no land. There's no stable land. There's nothing that can provide life. There's nothing that can sustain life. Okay. Death. Okay. So if you get overcome by time, you die. That's what happens when we get old. We get overcome by the degrading qualities of time, of death, of its changing. You know, our bodies change. It breaks down. They lose coherency. Something can change, and that could bring new life to a situation. You know, we find stories are boring if they don't spice it up a bit. Okay, but if there's too much, we die. Okay, I gave an example to Toby in the car earlier on. Like, say if you go out into a jungle is a dangerous place. You could die. There's no shelter really. The weather's
Very competitive.
bad. You know, there's animals. Who knows? You might die, but you might find some treasure. Who knows? You might find some temple that's made of gold somewhere. Okay, so that's the potential of life and death through that unknown.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So what part did I get to? So there's. I'm just saying this is all the Noah's flood is time getting so much power. Okay. And the more time gets more power, the less stable it is. Obviously, there's less land. But it gets to a point where time gets so chaotic, it can no longer sustain itself. It has to find order. Think about the yin and yang symbol. What's in the center of the black dot? The black's place. It's a white dot, right?
Yeah.
The same with the other one, right? Think about it this way. If you've got something that keeps changing, constantly changes, if it gets to a point where it changes so fast, so frequently, it will inevitably find just find a state that doesn't change quicker. So if you think about this curve, okay, sorry if you guys here listen to the audio only of this. If you've got this curve, the more you move, so say you've got this curve, back here if you move like that, not much of a difference, but here the more you move to the right, it's
you're getting further away.
Yeah, but you get to the point where say it's a vertical line, you move one place, other way, it's like you've went past infinity. You can't. There's so many possibilities that it can't sustain itself. So it'll just find, even just by sheer random chance, if that's why you want to look at it, it will find a state that will be orderly because it can't otherwise.
Yeah.
So if you think about the whole narrative, okay, yes, the actual time periods are getting shorter, but also we're less defined to a center. Okay, Greek medieval time is like united under a king, united under God. Okay, Deus vult. Okay, God wills. And then the Enlightenment brings in the idea. Now, a lot of these people are still religious, but it's a like, for example, you didn't know much about Isaac Newton. He wrote far more on. It's probably been said in that Four Horsemen podcast. To be honest with you, I think it was. John Pearson said it. He wrote far more on alchemy than he ever did in physics or anything what we would call science. Anyway, I could almost argue maybe we should go back to alchemy. Who knows? I'll not say that. So you've got this. It's you can see how after each period we're less connected to meaning, to the origin. The Newtonian way of thinking, philosophy now comments on on what we observe and what our theories are. It doesn't. Does that make sense? We're focused we're more focused on the outside. Now it's more prevalent in the 20th century and onwards, with the rise of modernism and like this idea of utopia. Yeah. You can say, oh, utopia, it's one, we're united under one. Well, not really, because you're not united under God. There's a depart from tradition and religion. I think it was tradition. That's the only thing that keeps us connected to our forefathers. So we're not connected in time now, not just right now, here and now, but we're now disconnected from our fathers past time. 21st century postmodernism, like it's almost comedic. I'm gonna look up the definition of postmodernism real quick on Wikipedia because the synonyms postmodernism, the synonyms for it is genuinely, it's hilarious if you understand symbolism. Postmodernism is an intellectual stance or model of discourse defined by an attitude of skepticism towards what it describes as a grand narrative, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so think about it. You're not certain. You're skeptic of something. You're not applying. You're not holding to one point. It's a opposition of epistemic certainty. You just reject the idea of knowing anything, and the stability of meaning. Okay, again, you're not held to a central meaning. Claims to objective fact are dismissed as naive realism. Again, it's all arbitrary. It's all, it could be anything. Postmodernism is characterized by self-referentiality, epistemological and moral relativism, pluralism, irony, irreverence, big words I can't say, right? The whole idea, it's all relativism. It could be anything. Think about it. It's never one thing. Like the way it is. It's always changing. We're getting closer. Then you got the 21st century, and then we're sort of in that period.
Yeah, well, like with the symbolism and stuff, and saying we may need like a tradition would keep us together and stuff, and that kind of thinking, and how we don't really have tradition, and it's very chaotic in the world now.
But I'm not even saying that. Although I do think personally we should have more tradition and more religious way of thinking and meaning way of thinking. Although I do think that personally, I think it's inevitable, whether I want it to happen or not. I think it's inevitable.
I can't confirm or deny that, if I'm honest, but I propose if it's inevitable, if you want to say that, I don't know, but to occur, that we all become more religious again, it's inevitable that it will come out again. And this is sort of the description of like an idea coming in and out of fashion.
Like the whole idea of, are we going to be more religious? Again, more specifically, I think we're going to be more, like, we'll call ourselves, we're following Christianity, for example, but it's even coming back in ways that you wouldn't necessarily know to call religion. Like the whole the ideologies of the 20th century, they have very religious structures to them. Do you mean?
Would you say this is how religion came about in the first place, potentially?
What do you mean?
As an
ideology,
kind of a narrative of as an ideology to sort of keep us all together under one uniform
no one
thing,
because
it was chaotic or anything.
No, there's no guy who's thinking, what should we order? Oh, it's too chaotic. We should create what would be good to create this thing, unless that guy's God, I suppose. But because they even think about the way you phrase that. Oh, this isn't good. It's too chaotic. You're in a religious framework. You've applied meaning to that, and you've applied a goal.
We start to lose me when we start to say that. But
why?
I just you lose me. Once
You've applied a goal. Who gave him the goal?
But we'll go down a rabbit hole here. I don't want to go down, if I'm honest. I would rather sort of...
Alright, well, you can stick with the scope of the...
Yeah, we'll skip with the scope, yeah. Well, I think, for me, what's wrong, I would talk about maybe the debate today, maybe, and then what we should maybe do within our generation to what we can do.
Do you want me to... we could talk about... So I've got the idea of, there's the now, but there's people who are in the now, in the past conversation, and there's people in now who are in the new or going to the new conversation.
Yeah, like if we speak about the past, like New-Atheist era, and
but even just, I mean, talk about that as well. But like even just right now, you know, people who are still
but then even saying like the New-Atheist era of like Dawkins and stuff is still now. If you know.
I know, but that's just how how short these periods are going.
These periods,
I think.
I think, from my opinion, that when a lot of more secular reasoning came about in the 20th century, and science started to become a thing, a lot more ideas were pushed about that we need to actually think rationally, and we need to like not jump to like random conclusions of things. And I think it got to a point, like in the Selfish Gene, there's nothing to do with religion or anything, and with Dawkins it was just purely, he's kind of summed up pathology and evolution in a very, very good one framework, and proposed, well, it was already proposed before that genes are the unit of evolution through Fisher's work, but Dawkins kind of publicized this in a really, really good way, and he brought in all the other researchers of the past 6 years, like Hamilton and things like that. And then he proposed the meme, and I actually think this was the biggest...
When did he do that, by the way? When?
1976. That was kind of... He didn't know, proposing that, what he had done. He's
In what
never really.
way?
I really don't think
He
when
hasn't,
he proposed the meme as like kind of like a culture, like ideas evolve too. I don't really think he really understood
because
what
that's a
he actually.
powerful idea.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was like, that's gold, and I don't think when he published the book, he realized that was gold. And then, what's I would say Dawkins' best books, the extended phenotype, he then just dove into this and sort of described which that ideas evolve too, and
So
how.
see Daniel Dennett.
Mhm.
Did he like discovered, oh, this is the idea of the meme from Dawkins, and he
I
um
don't know the first time he mentioned meme. He mentions it a lot in his book, The Evolution Religion is a Natural Phenomenon, in
yeah.
2006. But I don't know when they kind of like met together. So Dennett loved Darwin, loved evolution, and he was a philosopher. So he applied that really line of
So he
thinking.
made sure to look exactly like him.
Yeah, like it's kind of scary, isn't it? But
I think it is Darwin.
yeah,
Prove me wrong.
it's the new form. But in the extended phenotype, then Dawkins talks about what's quite like, so say like a beaver, it has all the genes of the beaver, and but the behavior of the beaver is building the dam. That is an like extended phenotype, and that's like the pairing of memes and genes. So not only say the genes are like code the behavior potentially, or it might be learned, but code the behavior of the beaver. But then the beaver affects like builds a dam, but then the dam then affects every other species
Yeah.
within that lake network. So he talked about like extended phenotypes, and then he gives like examples of parasites affecting behaviors and like sort of the Digrosseum dendriticum, which is the
Yeah, I
is it
wrote
the
some. I'm just trying to find some notes I wrote.
yeah,
Just listen to a Daniel Dennett video. Just to
yeah,
no,
and
if
then
you're still speaking, let me just jog myself over this while you're speaking.
yeah, then so that was kind of it was more than the blind watchmaker that Dawkins was like, right, I'm going to knuckle into that genes or how we got here, not like attacking more religious fundamentalism. And then it's he, River out of Eden, he addressed it again. And the Devil's Chaplain, I want to say he addressed it again. He had a few of them religious books, but
What's the
then
devil? Is that his book? Is that a book?
yeah, these are several books of Dawkins about. I'm not sure about Devil's Chaplain. Never read it, but he had a few books addressing different things in religion, and then he wrote the God Delusion,
Yeah.
which then he sort of was like, right, this is all the things wrong, and then he kind of just took a new turn of his life. Dennett was more. He done a lot with consciousness and stuff. I haven't really read a lot of his deep
Yeah.
philosophy, but then I've read Dawkins or Religion is a Natural Phenomenon by Dennett, in which he just proposes how it got here and stuff in an evolutionary light. It was very, very good. And then he speaks about what we can do in future about it. And then he made a relatively
What did
new
he
book.
say about what to do in the future?
So what I quite liked, so did he propose? It was like say in schools, for instance, we should teach religion as much as possible, and about all religions, and how we should then teach people to think rationally and through reason. Look at evidence and then make your decision. Not saying that religion.
How should it be taught?
I
Did he
think
say?
I suppose that's more like a discussion
Because that's pretty key. If you think
Yeah,
it should be
like,
taught,
definitely
how should it be taught?
with as little bias as possible. I think you need to like you can't.
But how would you? Because from my perspective, I don't think you can. Like I was sort of taught, at least in GCSE, a bit about Islam,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've got a decent-ish knowledge of Islam. I've got roughly understand what it is, what the key things. You got the pillars of it, all that stuff, right? But it could be very good for just understanding the doctrines of it and how it's structured. But I feel like if I I'm not sure if you could fully understand. You can. I don't think you can understand religion without participating in it,
Yeah, but
and that's when you. That's when the bias comes in, and I don't. I don't think there is a way out of that. Truthfully speaking,
he actually then it talks about this and how it's talking about, oh, you don't if you're not something, how do you understand something?
yeah.
And he sort of knocked it out of the park, which he was like, so to research the behavior of a pedophile, does that mean you need to be a pedophile? No, it doesn't. And you can know as much about it.
No, but you don't know what it feels to be what it feels like to be a pedophile.
No, you don't know what it feels like, but you can.
We can. I mean, we can play these mind games all we want. There are some things that we cannot attain with abstract.
But then,
ideas.
So do you not think
that's irrefutable? Like, I don't know.
But what I'm just proposing is we should teach more things to, like, in terms of religion, we need to teach kids and things more about religion right through school. Like, the first time I learned about Islam and stuff was in 3rd year in school. I'd already done 10, 11 years of education, 10 of which taught me about Christianity at that stage.
At what stage?
I just think it's a deep skew.
I understand that. Here's the thing. Maybe we should just maybe there's a case for both sides, but maybe what age? Because, like, say I watched a video of, like, there's some 3-year-old who's clearly just been indoctrinated by this, like, far left. Again, here's the warning: all those left-wing people here watching me for whatever reason, mate. This is not the place.
But indoctrination of 3-year-olds happens.
No. I'm making a case, just a case that can be used for either side. This child was clearly just indoctrinated by this, like, left-wing extremist person who.
Yeah.
What kid in the right mind is like, oh, I want to change genders because I know it's because I'm saying.
Yeah, mate, I get what you mean.
Kids are not on that level. It doesn't matter.
They're not.
Like,
but I
just mean. So I don't think we should confuse children.
But you're not teaching a child like deep, like, philosophical concept. It's a P3, but you're, like, automatically the bias is like Noah's Ark, draw the ark. It's lovely, isn't it? And just things like that. It's like.
But can I just have a wee bit of time to lay out bring my other hand in the view, lay out my case here. So I'm going to make a small case for dogmatism, the good side of dogmatism.
Okay.
I'm sure I don't need to convince you the bad side of dogmatism, because that's your base level. Okay, we should, obviously. So the good side of dogmatism, it is pure order as it gets. This is the way. You don't need to think about it. Just let me lay out this case. Yeah, it's order. It's like, it's rigid, or else it wouldn't be dogma. Okay, dogma is the thing where if you disagree with the dogma, you're not the thing that has the dogma. Like, if you object to the dogmas of the Catholic Church, you cannot be a Catholic by definition. Yeah. It's very rigid. However, say again, I'm going to bring these symbolic terms in. Like, say if you're in a state of you're lost, you're chaotic, and you're not on stable ground, you don't know what's going on. Should we bombard you with the multiplicities of just, like, all these ideas? Think about this, what about this, what about this, what about this, and you have to embody all of them, and what ones are you like, what's going on? I just need a guy to tell me straight, what should I do right now? And we could talk about what is that, what should we do right now? But I'm just saying, there are some, like, for example, say a parent and a child, like a young child, like a very young child. That parent, if a child does not understand why a parent is doing something or is telling the kid to do something, that is not reason to say the child shouldn't do it. The child just doesn't understand, most likely. And again, we could have a conversation of what dogmatic statements should a parent say to their child. I think that's where the conversation lies in. But I think it's a serious flaw, to just, because we can't just leave our kids with nothing.
Well, I would propose we leave our kids then, if we want to implement. I wouldn't really use dogmatism, but to think rationally and to think through logic and to think with reason. That's what then I would say the dogmatism line is. Then we bombard them with the ideas of all these religions and stuff. Then I would bring kids up secular till they're old enough to then understand what religion truly is, and then
No,
delve
but
into
then
what
again,
ones you
that's
want to.
just, it's like one. It depends on what's true. You're assuming secularism is like
Because
you're assuming secularism is like the default person, and then we could choose a religion if we want to.
it should be.
What? That's what I'm suggesting. That's what you think. I don't think that.
Yeah, but I think so. You don't under how crucial, like say, imprinting. So Conrad Lorenz, he studied like imprinting in animals and how crucial it is. And so, like a duck follows its mum. It follows the first thing it sees when it's born, and he got ducks to follow him. Um, kind of you said tomorrow and
Yeah.
stuff now, to be fair, but he got ducks to follow him, and we. It's proposing the blank slate, another Steven Pinker book about how there is still human nature and innate nature, and how much the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of your life are in terms of your development and the fixation of ideas in your brain. I think we should have to research this of like if you're completely exposed to a concept when you're really, really young, that will become fixated in your brain. You can't get rid of it, and you don't see any reason to get rid of it. And that is a problem with religion because you're fixating potentially harmful ideas, which is in the case, not in
I
religion
mean,
of all kinds harmful,
yeah,
but
but
you're fixating an
the thing
idea
is,
during development.
you say it's potentially dangerous.
Hmm.
We've just outlined what happens when God dies in the 20th century. We don't want that to happen.
No, but
You can't just say, okay,
but
they'll be less dangerous with a secular upbringing. That is false. It's verifiably false. You can't say that.
but it's you can't say it's not. So I'm not. But the
I'm not saying it's
no,
not dangerous. I'm just
not.
saying.
Sorry, I think you're taking this point a little bit. I
I just want you to
propose,
clarify a wee bit better. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm not proposing, regardless of like people should be religious or not. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying in the first few years of people's development, I don't think religion should be mentioned. It should not be a thing that we talk about really and drill into the kids really, really young, because these ideas get fixed into people's minds. People that do harmful things, like become serial killers and stuff, quite often have had really, really bad childhoods. And it can even be up to the age of like 6 or 7 because that's fixed. They want the harm because their first initial thoughts have been of harm. And we do need to start to like research and pick this apart like really deeply. We need to start to pick apart, should we, like researching what if you're exposed to religion and like at a really, really young age, how does that get fixed into the mind of any idea? And I think, say with you and Ben in particular, like you get into this. I wasn't brought up with it like indoctrinated into me, but it was my choice and I wanted to do it after, and then I got spun out of it. But if I just propose and like and when you're really young, putting any idea and like forcing it into a child does imprint into them, and it I just think we should more promote, look at all the evidence and pick what you think's best on your thought and what you're interested in and what you think, not what I think and you're going to do it.
But again, playing back into this narrative, it's like moral relativism, isn't it?
Yeah,
what if there is a right way?
I would say there is a right way to be good and stuff, 100%.
But what if there is a right religion? More specifically, what if Christianity is like,
maybe it is the right decision, but you don't know that,
or at
and
the very least, there's the best decision.
No, but again, that's again a subjective opinion. I just think that we have to put them right. So I'm not the one to tell them. So there's not enough evidence to say something's right or wrong. Like say if I have a child, I'm not going to go into them and be like, religion's not right, don't follow it. I'll just be like, do you know what? You do what you're interested in. Look at all the evidence, and you choose what you want to do.
Like for example,
choose what you want to believe.
Like for example, say you've got two parents who they're Christians and they practicing Christians. They go to church on Sunday, whatnot. Do they bring their 6-year-old to church?
Yeah, you ask them, do you want to go?
what if the
Two
parents
vegans have a child.
two what?
Two vegans have a child. You let the child eat meat. You do it. You let the child eat meat. It's not on them. It's not their choice.
But the thing is, it's not like, say if the parents are two vegans, they're gonna be preparing vegan food.
Yeah, but
and
you
that's
then
just gonna
prepare
pass on.
I think you ought to. Yeah, maybe mom and dad eat meat.
But say if you think veganism is morally virtuous opposed to eating meat. Like, say you think you have a moral issue, it's not a dietary thing, right?
Yeah,
would you not want your child to act virtuously?
But that's my choice, not the child's choice.
No, but because even yourself, you said you have a moral problem. You have a moral problem with the idea of eating meat, but you're not strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
But you could put forth the case. Even in your case, this could be argued for. Say if you have a kid, maybe you might want to bring them up as a vegetarian because they might be better than you if they're brought up with it.
But I'm not the judge to judge that. That's my opinion. Someone would be better, not theirs. So I would let them do that. That's up to them. I think it's really, really dangerous to force in ideas on a kid. I do, and I think religion's part of it.
What if the kid just doesn't want to go to school one day? Is it his choice to not go to school?
If a child doesn't want to go to school, I would make them go to school.
Why is your distinction
because it's important.
there?
Because
but is it not? Should we not look at the evidence? Should that child not make a decision?
But there's a point though, right? So if a
I'm
child,
saying you use it in all areas of your life. Why is it different here?
Right. But there's a point where the child can then make its own decision. It doesn't want to go to school anymore.
As in age-wise.
Yes, age-wise. But I propose indoctrinating him that you must go to university, and a 6-year-old is wrong. But once they get the 5th year and they're legally allowed to leave school properly, if they don't want to go any further, that's on them and they can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But if it's like a P7 wants to leave school, that's a different.
Yeah, but say
but the same way if the P7 wants to go to church, I would
say your son is 17. I'm not going to force a 17-year-old to go to church with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same, but it's more of not. It's less of a sense of. It's more of the fact that I can't. That person has to be their own person now. They need to take root wherever their path is. Maybe they want to follow whatever I taught them. Maybe they want to go off and not listen to a word I said. There's a period where I would be trespassing if I'd want that to happen, because that would just.
But the damage. Sorry, not. But
we do. Damage, you understand that we need to bring up children. We need to tell them about the world, and we need to tell them. We don't say, "What do you think this?" We tell them. When you go to school, we tell you the mathematical equations. You don't need to figure it out like all our traditions did, our past ancestors did. But I just think we can tell you, here's what we've got.
But people keep that really close to the kids and just teach them loads of Christian, or any religious value, and that imprints on them for later life. So when they then go to make their own decision, all they know is Christianity, and that's where they go. That's not fair.
I won't disagree with you there. I know people who I don't know how they can exist, and I'm not condemning this. But I could talk to someone and they just never considered an alternative. They never just had a doubt. They were always a Christian. Never really thought about it. I don't know how that works.
You call this I would say this is education or knowledge bias, and this is a problem with any debate. You follow what you understand most and what you know, but if all you know is one thing, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to learn the other thing, because if you will follow and you will do only what you know. So, for instance, even in any academic research, if I only know my argument, that's what I'm going to follow, because that's what I understand and what I know. And that's where it's kind of dangerous a little bit. All you read is atheistic things or non-atheist. And that's dangerous because you'll follow what you know. But I think in a child, especially, if all they know is Christian stuff, like Christianic thing, and in the current education system, that's kind of the way it goes.
How about, I'll make a comment and then I'll talk about one thing. In terms of the narrative, so when I talk about the Greek medieval way of use of philosophy, there was a sense that we try to find what we think is true, and then and then when the scientific method came about, it was completely reversed. So we're trying to disprove our theory. That's just, I should want to know that.
Because
here's a proposition. How about we raise them in our traditions, but we'll also challenge those traditions, but we still hold on to tradition, we embody the tradition, but it's like, but I'm gonna push you here. I think because if you listen to John Lennox, he talks about that's what his father did. Like when he was like 13 or 14, his dad gave him the Communist Manifesto and was like, "What do you think of that, son? Have a read of it." Do you know what I mean?
Like, I think there's a bit of logic in that. It's like, you can tell your child, I believe this, and this is why I believe it, but don't make that right, you're doing this, because, there's a difference. You need to keep every door open to the child. It's like, I would love nothing more than if I had a child that loves science, but I am not going to make it love science.
No, like, but would you make it? Would you make him at least understand science is a thing? And then if there's a level, it's like where he's like, and
again,
you say, okay,
I've never said that's not a thing. Like,
I'm not saying you. I'm not
know that religion's is a thing or not. No, they should know.
No, I'm not saying
they don't need to be. That's all they know. I think you need to give them a wee bit more pots. And we can actually.
Okay, I will say this: there will be an age. If I have a kid, I'll not force.
But
I'm not gonna strap him to my back and be like, right, we're going to church, son.
No,
right?
no, but I'm not. But
I'm not saying
you're gonna bring.
I'm saying at what age do I decide that? At what age do I say if they don't want to go to church? I don't.
That's a moral judgment, I suppose. I don't know the answer exactly. I don't. But I think it's more than an individual parent thing. I think it should be like an educational thing, and I think it's the job of schools and education to educate kids in different ways. I just think they should more promote to think, be rational, and if you believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ and you look at the evidence and think that's good enough, that's perfectly fine. I just propose, please look at the evidence. That's all it is. That's
what
all.
do you say?
I want to just promote that kind of thinking.
What do you say? So, this is the problem with just assuming,
because we can actually research like this.
The problem with that line of thinking, not the logicness. I'll just say the problem with saying that most people are normal people. They're not flipping intellectuals and look at us intellectuals. We think about things. Look at us.
And that's why it's the job of schools. Exactly.
No. That's because not. This is a human issue. It's not an institution issue of who does it. I'm not saying not everyone's intellectual, so they can't teach it. I'm saying most people don't care about this stuff, and they shouldn't care about this stuff.
But they should be caring.
They should be caring about. Like my dad would care more about how to build a house. That's fine.
Yeah,
you should care more about how to fix a car. You should care more about how to make a good presentation and how to do these productive things. This is not productive. It's not productive. Most people shouldn't do this.
No, but you do learn about Christianity, so there's time to do that though.
But not necessarily. Like, Kyle, I don't think you can appreciate the mentality of a lot of people. But it's how do I explain this?
Kind of, I don't know. You're like losing me a little bit, and like because what I'm just trying to say is like we should teach them more like to look at evidence and at an earlier age, rather than starting Christian as they sort of do. Promote. You should look at something, and if you think it's good on you, do it. Like that kind of thing should be more, because in Northern Ireland especially, but and in America, in fact, in the UK, I would say, and definitely America, there's a slight Christian bias. Just purely, people don't say. Even with the people that are non-academics, as you sort of call them, non-intellectuals, there's a slight Christian bias because that's all they know, because that's all that they've been taught. So that
I'm suggesting that when you look at the evidence, most people aren't going to do that. Most people can't do that.
And then
they need a structure.
Will have no bias, at least. They won't have a slight Christian bias because most people don't look into things. I agree. However, all they've been taught, and because it's all is a bit of religion, and they
Yeah, but they're
So
not
then
going to be
that's what
united under anything. You're going to be the average
but the,
guy who's in the bar. That's like your church. You just go to the bar because that's the place of meeting from people, and you're not tied to anything that calls
but then
you.
you're proposing that we should just have religion to keep us together, and that's kind of the evolutionary benefit of it, is it keeps us together, and that's what's here. Like you're basically saying we should do it to keep us together at that rate, and that's why it is a thing, because it keeps us together.
I'm not saying we should do it for the sole reason, but I'm
No,
saying
but that's why
that's a fruit of it.
Yeah, but that's why it's a thing in the first place.
Like I'm not doing this from a why we should do things. I'm doing this from
I'm
like
going to need to go quite soon because it's.
How long have you got
half.
more?
10 minutes.
Yeah.
I have like a couple of like research, so we can actually like research, like why people are religious, and like, do you know what a generalized linear mixed model is?
No, well, of course. You're talking to Joshua Young, Kyle. You don't think I know what a linear mixed model is?
Well, or like we can use Bayesian statistics, which are like prediction.
Yeah,
statistics.
that's just
right.
easier.
Right, so we can like look at. So right, in a normal like scientific, you look at X in the relationship with Y, but you can encounter covariates. So we can look at why people become religious and look at many variables, and do it in a research synthesis framework. And I think that should be done. And
has it been done?
I don't, not to my acknowledgement.
What do you mean? Why? What do you mean? Why do they become religious?
Well, what are the confounding variables of their upbringing that influence their religious opinion? So what combination of things gives the most religious people? What gives the most secular people? What gives the most Muslim people? What gives the most... It can be done with like any really like meme as such. And
I think there's issues with the... like if someone's say someone doesn't hold to a religious tradition, are they just?
Oh, then what gives?
Are they by definition are they just secular?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then you would give either secular people or unknown or agnostic. Yeah, like you could have all that. Most people, like when you do say a survey, God is
I
God
know
real?
I know what
yes,
you mean,
no,
but I just think you would I'm assuming you would probably think the accuracy and usefulness of that test would be a lot more than I think it would be. I think it would.
No, but I think things like this should be like known to people. It should be quantified versus at me. I'm like in my head. I'm like, right, you come from Saudi Arabia, you're going to be Muslim, but really dig into why. Saudi Arabia, being from Saudi Arabia with
you could maybe talk about you could have a study.
You
could have a study that's solely based on what religion gets the most converts to it. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, the things I think we should really start to delve into these things, and like it's really really useful.
So in our last few minutes, I'm just gonna fire these questions, and then if there's anything that comes to mind. So what are the issues of the debate so far?
I think. To me, we kind of talk past each other because we're on different levels quite often.
Would you say we need to understand each other's language
a lot better?
First,
a lot
that would be
better.
A starting point.
Yeah, I think we need to understand each other a lot better.
Yeah.
We need to move in this. We can't see each other as enemies. We need to see the benefit of humanity as a goal, and we're together with two contrasting opinions, but we need to, like saying like Northern Ireland, right, there's Protestants and Catholics have opposing opinions, but we can all agree that we want a safer place to live, so we need to work together to get that. And I think it's a similar thing to like the same, like I'd say like the far left and the far right are clashing, and it just creates chaos, but we all want a better people. The left believe not so and the right believe opposite, but like we all want a better place for everybody. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And I think we can't be enemies in this game. We need to research each, like.
The only issue I would take with that is like, in theory, yes, but in practice, our ideas of a better place for one, our reasons for wanting a better place are different, and our understanding of what a better place is different. So like, although technically yes, everyone wants the world to be better through their own eyes. It's just if that's where we're going for.
But I
it's
suppose
not
I
very
have
much.
an image of a better world,
Yeah.
and it's a different image to yours.
Yeah. So next question: are we making any progress?
Yes.
Yeah. Where?
I think, especially, I think, as you sort of said, the four horsemen of meaning and things, and I think the Strident Dawkins has been amazing to really build this as like, right, we need to do. There's an issue here of irrationality as a sort of thing and doing things without reason, and that needs addressed, and they've built this community of wanting this. But I think now we need to address the solution. So the strident bit doesn't need to happen as much anymore, and we need to come together. And like,
I will
say
that
being liberal, quite.
I will say, to all my criticisms of the New-Atheist movement, they did destroy a horrible theology that couldn't stand to their criticisms, to their compliment.
We need to work with like religious people that are good people, but we say with like Christopher Hitchens and stuff. Like,
so it's like these four horsemen came about the place and just started throwing bricks everywhere, and then we're left with the remnants, and we need to work together.
Work together with the remnants. Yes, because I'm sorry, I don't want to talk to someone that I keep saying this promotes the beheading of gays. I've nothing to say on this. No.
Yeah.
I don't care why but no. And I think that was more their get the terrorism out, get the real nastiness out.
Militarism.
Yeah, get that out. And now we'll see. We'll talk with the remains now.
Where are we going in the near term and the long term?
I think we need more, like, obviously through research we need more like funding into this. If we think it's really, we do not
where do we need, where are we going? Yeah.
What I think the immediate future, we're going more secular, because I think it's nothing to do with this debate that we're having. I think it's more political opinions.
Yeah.
Or
what about the long term?
The long term,
say like 50 to 100 years plus.
I still see a continuation of secularism.
What about like 200 years?
I'm throwing a
that's
brick in
fair.
a puddle because I don't know where science is. So there's a real turmoil in science now of fabrication, and they're really promoting like rigorous evidence and rigorous because a lot of our ideas and stuff. So there's a thing called time lag bias. So if I discover climate change, for instance, I will report it really, really bad. It's the worst thing ever, and get it published in Nature and become famous. But then when we start to research it, that's where the funding went, and people still cite the papers of the 1970s saying these things. But we realise the effects aren't necessarily as bad as time goes on. It's quite a common thing. But
I mean, there's something like within 20 years, there's like a study saying the world's going to be frozen over and the world's going to be on fire.
Yep. And give it 20, 30 years of research, the world's going to get pretty cold. And that's the kind of thing. But people still, the most famous papers are published in the biggest journals at the start. So there's like a real problem, and we need to figure out how to address these things. So I think that's like where science's attitude is going. We need to repeat a lot of experiments and that's where like meta science is. And I'm really excited.
That's where your meta-analysis comes in.
It's the most reliable source of evidence.
Watch this space.
Yeah, no, like meta science is going it's going to boom.
Yeah,
I think it really it needs to boom.
You're going to do all of it.
Yeah, like assessing biases and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think like we'll go.
You're going to drain all this energy from this Australian guy, and you're just going to take it all for yourself. What's his name?
Shinichi Nakagawa. He is like one of the real advocates to use this in ecology and evolution, and he's like, it's amazing what he's done. Like, but I think so. Science needs to delve more into this. In fact, James Tour talks about he's one, what is it, hype on his abiogenesis thing, and hype is just basically talking about they're just hyping up stuff without the actual truth behind it.
Yeah.
I don't know the literature enough to say, oh, is that really just hype
Yeah.
or whatever? I don't know, but the concept of things just being hype, because I think it's quite
Just
hard
to
with
clarify for the
abiogenesis.
viewers, Kyle was speaking to James Tour on
Yeah, I had
Zoom
to
or something.
talk to James Tour.
Yeah, might
But
have him on. He hasn't responded to my email yet.
no, I think he would. Come on, if I'm honest. But
Putting it out there.
I think, but abiogenesis is like, does it have a? So James Tour's opinion of it is like, right, this isn't a thing, and Professor Dave explains is like, it is a thing. However,
Yeah.
I think it can be a thing. However, there's not evidence to suggest it's a thing yet, because James Tour played this like probability game of like, what's the probability that this happened, and I'm like, well, there's 20 billion galaxies with X amount of planets and stuff, and I'm like, the probability number game is answered that it can happen. It's just, did it happen or not? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say too, where are we going in the near and long term? I will agree with you in the near term.
And we need
will
to be
get more
careful. Sorry, just put one more point. We need to be careful who represents people in the public space as well, because say,
Is this to suggest, and like Professor Dave explained?
well, I think right. I really like his content. I've watched quite a bit, quite good science and stuff. But this nastiness,
But
and stuff in the
he's just an,
I like. That's
with all the
not
love
what,
and respect, he's an asshole,
yeah,
and
and I
he's
don't.
argumentative, and
That's
you
not what
know,
needs represented.
yeah,
And like, I want like, yes, Dawkins like say really strident in religion, but you can tell he loves science, and that's who you want to be represented by.
yeah,
Like he loves like on Unwaving the Rainbow, he just talks about how poetic science is and how dare we say science isn't poetic, and it's just him talking about his like the love of poetic science, and like he loves it, and that's what you want. I don't want this like nastiness
yeah.
to be like representing like the community.
Yeah, I mean,
But
because like he see me as an enemy when I suggested that he should talk to
yeah,
James Tour.
yeah, that's not. But I've no problem where it's different. Like when, say, with Christopher Hitchens, when he's digging in on true issues, you need to be strident, and that's like when he's going in with like the terrorism and stuff of like the Islamic State, like that needs to be strident and represented with a real you can't do
Yeah,
this. But when it comes down to like abiogenesis, is it a thing? Is it not? If it is a thing, it doesn't say anything about God being real or not. But he thinks it does. If it isn't a thing, it equally doesn't. It's a scientific debate. The only thing I keep calling him James Tooney, that's a boxer. James Tour, well, he was picking apart like, oh, he said biochemistry. It's nothing to do with biochemistry, but it kind of is to do with the evolution of biochemistry. So like he was being really nitpicky about some things that he shouldn't have been nitpicky about, and James sort of had like a refutal to the evidence in the literature. So what Professor Dave explains done, he's looked at all the literature published in Nature and stuff and being like, yes, it's done. Because obviously if I'm going to write
yeah,
something, I'm going to make it sound the best things in sliced bread. And he's bought into that.
yeah,
And James has just done a refutal to that.
yeah,
Like it's not what it seems.
yeah.
And that's where metascience will tell you it's not what it seems.
And it
Like,
comes full
and
circle.
actually, James maybe spent so many hours looking into this. I could do it in one paper, not even knowing the subject truly, and show you what's wrong with it. And
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make some comments. Where are we going near term and long term? For me, I'd agree with you. I think we're going more secular. It's going to go more. The chaos is not ending, but the seeds are there. And I think long term,
well, chaos isn't just
going to come
the
back.
world's getting more chaotic, not necessarily due to being secular.
I'm just saying.
No, I know. Like
I'm
no,
saying the secularism is a fruit of the chaos. But
Yeah,
we'll get onto these other questions.
Chaos is like, I could say, if you want to put it that way, we're less uniform if you
yeah,
class that as
you're not tight.
chaotic.
You're not tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
What have we all agreed on that was an issue in the past?
Well, this is where religion is kind of becoming a bit more malleable. It's not as strict as I think it once was. I'm like the distinction. I have no. If you see the symbolism and the benefit of stories in the Bible, like that's up to you. But when people use the Adam and Eve story as a refutal to evolution, I'm sorry, but that's an issue. And a clear misjudgment of evidence, in my opinion.
Because you're taking a post-Enlightenment, sort of 21st century view of a text that was written before science was a thing.
But people keep...
through the lens of science as if they had the same language. I'm not... this is no comment to... does it describe an event or not? It's a comment to you're looking at it through a lens that did not exist thousands years before they wasn't even fathomed.
And that's but I think people that take it pure fundamentally are looking at it through this 2,000-year-old lens.
Like the kind of fundamentalism that says the fish outlined in Jonah can't be a whale because whales are mammals. I'm not going to comment on that. Do you know what I mean? That's the extreme. And that exists. That kind of fundamentalism exists. It's not they call it fundamentalism is offensive to the word fundamentalism.
Yeah,
it's not fundamental. It's just asinine.
Do you think we imply like a little bit more than like say you can create a deeper story and a quite shallow story? Do you think any of that's happened with the interpretation of today on like the biblical stories?
Today.
Yep. So like say I can write a story about me walking to the shop. All I've thought about is me walking to the shop. But I can go quite deep into what walking into the shop means. But when I wrote it, all I meant was like I'm going to the shop. And do you think...
but if you did that, you would be adding these symbolic structures to do that. It's not like we're pretending these symbolic structures exist. No, they do exist. It's just to the degree our story relates to those structures.
But I don't want to address any meaning, anything. Just I'm going to the shop. That's it.
Yeah, that's not a meme that will survive the decades of storytelling, I'm afraid.
No, and I agree. It's not, but there's obviously a level of depth. But then this is where it's a really good story, deep story with deep meaning, and that's why it's ingrained in us. I can see that. But I still think, like, I was more like asking you that, but that's why it's like it's evolved. It's a strong meme. Same way language is a very strong meme because talking and communicating and even thinking because of language.
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky said it.
We can look at it two ways. You can say, did it just come about because it held to these structures that cause a good meme, and that's the only reason, or did?
Because folk religion, if it became organized religion, and I can see that as a process. Strong folk religions, sort of like communal.
But the thing is, it's hard.
Stories.
It would be hard to differentiate to a level, because if you say, "Oh, it's just there because it's the best story that describes reality perfectly," it's just that, and it's like,
no.
I mean, is it just the best story because it describes reality perfectly and like how we define meaning? Is that a just? It sounds pretty insightful to me. So it's not very clean cut.
I just think it's definitely like a topic to be investigated, like the foundations and like the selection pressures that could evolve, like of memes, like memetics. I think should become a thing properly.
Memetics.
Wow. It is a subject, but it should be a thing. It's important for us as people.
There's a guy who I found on the internet.
I actually hate that sorry to interrupt. I really hate that internet memes have become a thing because it like devalues the coin memes so
But it's
badly.
great. It's great. It
Because then
perfectly.
you know
It's
why? Because
perfect.
memes are memes.
They are memes, but they're so confined. It's so easy to understand because even you can just think about it how joke memes battle it out. Like 1 week there's this meme and it's all the craze. Everyone's using that template, and the next week it's last week's meme.
But the real good memes
But the good memes
are eternal.
yeah, there's always a Rick Asley Rick roll somewhere.
Yeah.
There will always be that.
Yeah, like it's
There will
eternal.
always be a fantasization of Shrek.
Yeah, like getting rickrolled will be funny forever.
Yeah.
Because it like my Steam page.
The science of humor.
Like, I can show you after. Like my Steam page is a rickroll. Like
Well,
my profile is complete Rick Asley, and my bio's just I'm never gonna give you up full lyrics.
now I will be honest with you. I was applying for an interview for a scholarship.
Okay.
And it was just a plain, you weren't really meant to say anything in the application, in this part of the application. So you have the CV, and then part of that you upload something, but it's not really designed to you. It's all the information in the CV.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any additional files that we could use or something. I was like, so I so I put a link to a Rickroll in that thing. So I was like, what if I just Rickroll these guys? What would they do about it? Would they mention it? I was like, I only live once. So I potentially Rickrolled these guys who were giving me an interview for this. I was like, do I want to be the guy who's like, yeah, Rickrolled some interviewer, or do I want to be the guy who was like, no, I'll play it safe?
We need to be professional, but there's
I'm not saying what I did was correct. I would say what I did was actually incorrect, but
yeah, but there's like
it wouldn't
we need to be professional. But I think there is a comedic element that needs to be brought into the academia and the professional world, and I think it benefits it's quite a lot.
If my CV was a Rickroll, that would have been too far. But if it's this extra thing that shouldn't really be there for these processes, if that's
like one
of
your like references,
it's Rick Asley.
I'm just gonna flick. I have a couple of notes here just to make sure there's nothing I really want to talk about. Just a little bit maybe. Like sort of publishers and like social media, if we put them together, just the power that they have and what information they put in the world, and they need to realize the power that they have. And
Kyle, medium long term, you know the solution to that. What? Keep what? No one's gonna know what we're talking. No one's gonna know what I'm talking about, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's sort of everything that I've got. I've made really, really brief notes. Just rational thinking. I sort of talked about the education. We've done that. Information bombardment in kids. Yeah, I think that's really me. Just sort of.
What about what?
I think things like we do here are important.
If one of us could choose something that the other person would agree on, if we could choose, like, what would we want to agree on, or at least see eye to eye on? If we could just flick a button, you would see, understand. What would you choose?
If we could see eye to, I think it's like saying what quality evidence is, maybe. But in me and you, I think you do see quite good evidence. But like being like there's evidence of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, I'm like, that is not evidence of a resurrection. I think there's a jump. Oh, Jesus exists. Loads of detail. I can accept that 100%.
I mean, there is evidence.
There's evidence, but I don't of sufficient quality to accept. And a big claim like that is the definition of like a time lag by a starter. Or like go from he resurrected to he just went to sleep. He was on a mad one. Like that's where that story ends in the science world. Like
I'll be honest, the way the story lays out, there's. We could talk about that for another time, but I mean more broadly speaking, not just necessarily us two, but as the conversation
valuing rational, being rational. if we can all value
No,
it's
like
important.
it's not like I say what would we, but we don't. It's like obvious. Like you obviously have no
But
idea
I
what
don't
my
think.
understanding of like
Yeah,
religion
maybe I'm
is.
missing your point. Because I'm saying what I hope that we all become rational. I don't really know
Yeah.
exactly one thing.
What do you think I don't understand from your perspective? That's holding me back from understanding you.
But it's like a thing of being brought up, and it's there's like I don't really know exactly. It's like a quality of like evidence and reason, and like I don't know. It's something along them lines of like you see this what the full thing, and it needs to be like. So when you imply meaning and things, and like say consciousness, it's something more than material. It could be more than material. I don't know, but I'm just saying to throw all the eggs in the bucket that it is.
I think it's not material by definition.
Yeah, where I think
Like
there's a debate and research to be
it's
had.
like beyond dispute to me. Like
Yeah,
how
where like
is this?
I see that as a future discovery and a big discovery of that.
I
But we
think
didn't
I think
dispute
it's
how we
like
got
the way
here.
the words you're saying and the order you're saying them. I'm like, what?
Yeah, but that's the thing. And but
What's
it's
your
an
consciousness made
ingrained.
of?
It's an ingrained thing.
As in, you're talking about your the fact that you can observe. You think that's made of something. The experience.
Yeah, like I don't know.
It's experience. It's not
I
material.
propose we don't know. And it
I'm
needs
proposing
research.
that we have direct knowledge.
Where I don't know what consciousness exactly is.
I'm not saying I know. I'm not saying I know what it
think
is. I'm saying
probability
it's
suggests that it's something created by the brain, and there's an evolutionary benefit to it. That's what I think it is.
no.
But
I'm not saying. I'm not negating that they're material
I really
influences. Okay.
I'm gonna go.
Well,
Because
we cannot understand each other for a later time.
yes, we cannot. What's your thing for me? Just before.
After all that, you just to understand. Well, I can say I understand how I see the world. I understand the world from a.
I'd love to walk around with your brain for like a couple of days and be like, okay.
Yeah, you just.
But
be
this
like,
is where I think the
you'd be like you just be.
because I'm never gonna change your mind and you're never gonna change mine. So that's why we.
Oh, here's the hope.
We can't.
I would if I could flick a switch and you would understand me in one thing. It would be my view on religion as a category of things. It's not outside of religious institution, outside of organized religion, but the broader category of this is religious. This is religious behavior.
Yeah.
If you could just understand that, I would.
Because
Be
I
happy
think
with
there's
that.
like an order of like structure in the world, and religion to me is down with an adapted behavior. So, if you have it like shells of different like, say if I don't know like science have but say as adapted, I put it down as an adapted behavior like culture of humans. Like
Yeah,
that's
but
where
again,
it is.
you don't know what I
It's
mean.
with
That's what I'm saying.
linguistics.
I
It's
know
important.
how little you understand what I mean by this. It's like it's hard to talk about it.
But that's
again,
where I think
this isn't what we have or what we could agree on. What we are agreeing on. It's like what would we agree on if it's possible.
yeah, because I really want
That's for
to.
future.
I want to remove my like knowledge bias.
Yeah.
And I want to be informed because if I can really, that's what I mean, I want to understand as much as I can what you think, like, and then make my decision properly.
Yeah, I do think your judgment is heavily biased by the standard scientific method way of looking at the world. I think
But so is
biased by that.
but I think every like
Yeah.
most
Almost everyone who lives in the 21st century is. I'm not saying you're any different.
no, I'm not. But I think, and it's the same. Like I think a bit with you and religion, but you see, like sort of Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, they're starting to actually. These are people that kind of get the other way of thinking, but disagree, and that's where I really like listening to them, because
Yeah.
they're sort of dabbling about with each other's idea really, really well, rather than talking at each other.
They're
That's where
sort
like,
of.
I really want like Dan Dennett to talk to Peterson a bit and see where they go,
Yeah. How old is
because
he?
like more with the consciousness stuff, like, and because I haven't read Dan Dennett's new book, From Bacteria to Back and Back. Like
How
the
old is Stan
composer.
Dennett? Is he like near 80 or something?
He's about 80, I'm sure. And to realize, like, because he's done like a lot on the evolution of consciousness and the benefit of it, as which is a real, which I think he's sort of right, but I don't know. He doesn't really describe it because we don't know as a sort of like a neuro, like, is it sort of like a neurology thing or
like
not? And that's where
I really want to
neurological
familiarize myself a bit more with Daniel Dennett, and then I want to comment on it because I see already from the get-go of some of the videos you sent me, I can point out some serious flaws that are like not like, I agree with almost all he says. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think, but that's what it is.
But there are a few things
it's the 5-10%ers.
Yeah.
Like what you said all about the symbolism and meaning and stuff in the Bible, 100%. I can't dispute that. But the minute it then jumps to the higher being bit, like the God smuggling thing, or like Jordan Peterson likes to change definitions in debates.
Well,
quite a bit.
I won't smuggle him to you. I'll
this.
give him to you outright.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to go now.
Yeah. Well, that was a good chat.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and we've made a step forward.
Have we made progress? We've outlined the playing field.
Yeah, I think quite well.
Yeah.
More than anything, I understand that I need to understand you. And
so,
we'll leave it there.
From that an hour and a half, we've figured out we don't understand each other, and maybe we should understand each other.
And it would be good to understand each other. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, that'll be the end of it. Thank you for watching.
And goodbye.
Like, comment. Don't be angry. Don't be SLB or Mo. Don't be angry. Be reasonable.
He's a madman.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hey, goodbye.
Goodbye.